Thank you so much for tuning in to DCRE TV. We have a great interview for you today. All right, Rob, thank you so much for joining me here today. I really do appreciate you giving me your time on this cloudy Sunday afternoon in January. But thank you, thank you, thank you. I know you have very little of it, especially on a Sunday. So again, I appreciate you for spending some time with me today.
My pleasure. I was happy to do it.
All right, all right. So this part of this interview, at the beginning, I like to call the roots. If you don't mind, starting from the beginning, when your family, where they originated from, how they got started, and how you got to where you are now as a family unit.
Well, great-grandparents on my father's side came from Italy, and my mother came over from the United Kingdom.
Okay, and then how did they immigrate to the U.S.?
Well, I guess my family on my dad's side had other friends and relatives that had wanted to come to the U.S., made their way here, I think for a new beginning. It's funny, I just posted something yesterday about, the United States being the land of opportunity, and I think they totally bought into that. And on my mother's side, I mean, she came from a working class family that, their story was pretty wild. I mean, both of my grandparents on my mother's side literally grew up in orphanages. They both separately had lost their parents. She grew up in a rough and tumble neighborhood, and I think just wanted to do something different, and literally came over here as a nanny and ended up liking it, and met my dad, and ended up there with going back.
Oh, wow, that's an amazing story, man. So where did they land when they got here into the U.S.?
Yeah, so on my dad's side, they ended up settling in Hicksville, Long Island.
Okay.
Which was a working class community back in the day. And then it was funny, my dad ended up getting booted out of college, was a homesick Italian kid, didn't like being away from home, didn't do well in school, got kicked out, ended up going to night school. My grandfather told him if he was going to live at home that he had to get a job. Right. So we got a job as a postman during the day, and went to school at night to become a teacher, which he ultimately ended up doing for 35 years.
Wow.
And as luck would have it, my mother had come over as a nanny for a wealthy family in Great Neck, Long Island, which happened to be on my dad's postman route. So that's how they initially connected.
Oh, man, so your dad was the mailman? He was the mailman?
He definitely was.
Shout out to your dad. Is he still with us?
He's not. He passed in 2011, but God bless him.
God bless him. So what was his name?
Dennis.
Dennis. And your mother's name, if you don't mind sharing?
Sure. Ethel.
Ethel?
Yeah.
Awesome. So, okay, so they met, they married eventually, and then they had you. And this was all in Long Island?
Yeah, so they ended up settling up in a town out in Long Island where Jeff called Selden. Where, again, that was probably a 25-minute drive for him to get to school to teach, and my mother was a stay-at-home mom.
Awesome. And are you the only child?
No, I'm the oldest of 3 boys, so I have 2 brothers.
Oh, 2 brothers. Okay, that's cool. So what was it like, 3 boys growing up in Long Island? Tell me about your childhood, any nostalgic memories you have from being in Long Island?
Yeah, look, I loved it, right? I mean, I'd say we probably grew up lower middle class,
okay.
Which I look at kind of where I've gone to today and the things that we do and get involved in. And, there's always like this element of imposter syndrome.
That man's an imposter. That man is the imposter.
Follow where you go. But we had a great life. I mean, we had an idyllic bunch of friends in the neighborhood, kind of thing where you went out and rode your bike and you played all day, and your mother yelled out the back door and you came back, when the sun went down. And so it was an incredible way to grow up. My family was, great. We had another uncle and aunt that didn't live too far away from us, so we used to see them every once in a while. When I was younger, we used to make the trek all the way into Hicksville, which was probably a 40-minute ride, to have big Sunday dinners with the Italian family, which was great. That kind of got diluted over time, as people got older and as some started passing away. But yeah, no, that where I grew up and how I grew up was a foundational element for me, and something I'll always appreciate and never forget.
Awesome, awesome. And you mentioned the word Italian family. Was yours the quintessential Italian family that we've all grown to love, and we see so much on TV and you read in books, and this, big family with all the great character and charisma that Italians are known to have?
Yeah, no, it was probably the generation before me. It was much tighter. But it was big. And I used to laugh. As a kid, we used to go in. My grandparents had a home across from my great-grandmother. My great-grandfather had passed away. My aunt lived above my grandparents, and they would have everybody over for Sunday afternoon meals, which were, fantastic. And like I said, I think, the reality for me, unfortunately, was as I started growing up and as some certain people passed away, the closeness of that family unit dissipated a bit. So I wouldn't say I continued all the way through. It was funny, at the table, people would speak Italian, but my dad never spoke Italian to me, so we didn't pick it up, which I wish we would have. But yeah, it was great. I mean, again, as a kid, being involved and being exposed to all of that was fantastic.
Awesome. And then you being a kid, what type of kid were you?
Yeah, look, I kind of laugh in hindsight because my dad was, when he was younger, he got drafted, went to Vietnam, which I think had an impact on him. He never talked about it, but he ended up being a guy that he was an incredibly extroverted person that could have a volcanic temper. And I think when I was growing up, I never did anything wrong, right? I did not want to get out of line. I did not want to upset him. Nor did I give a reason to, right? I mean, I kind of was switched on early where I kind of laughed because I probably read more and I paid attention to school a lot more. I never cut class. I didn't do anything, degenerate-wise. I kind of stayed, towed a straight line with him, and he appreciated that.
Right.
As I grew older, and I laughed because my brothers were got a lot more real, I guess, and gave him some reason to show some of that temper sometimes. But I did not want to go off kilter with him, and so I kind of kept very straight to what I was doing, and I was very focused at an early age. I laughed when I was growing up. Family Ties was a TV show with Alex B. Keaton. I tried to wear a blazer and slacks and go to school like that. And I took it very seriously.
Wow.
I was a bit introverted growing up. I was a bit nerdy, to be honest. I just laugh when I look at the way I was as a young kid and kind of how life changes you and how you grow up. It's just been a phenomenal ride.
Awesome. And let's go back to your father, because on this platform we like to, highlight veterans. What service or branch of service was your father in?
Sure, he was a U.S. Marine.
Oh wow! So he got drafted. So he went to Vietnam. One tour?
Well, he got drafted for Vietnam, but then was stationed in Okinawa. So he didn't directly fight in Vietnam, but he was stationed in Japan.
Okay. Well, definitely salute to him for his service. The country called on him, and he answered the call. So we appreciate your family's contribution to this country. Definitely. And you have some brothers. Are you guys pretty tight?
I'm probably closer to my middle brother.
Okay.
I actually reconnected with my youngest brother not too long ago.
Okay.
We had spoken in a bunch of years when my dad died. I think things just kind of went their own ways, and we actually just reconnected recently, which has been nice. But I couldn't be happier for them. My one middle brother ended up settling out in Chicago in the suburbs. And my youngest brother actually followed my dad into the Marines, where we went to his graduation, and I was blown away with kind of that whole process. And then he became a New York City cop and was stationed in one of the worst precincts around in Jamaica, Queens. Did his time there. Was able to transfer out to Long Island, where he was a Suffolk County cop, and then he just retired not that long ago down to South Carolina. And again, his wife is great. I mean, she's a nurse, and they have two kids that have done really well in school. And My middle brother, again, he's got 2 kids that have done really well, and they're in college now. So I couldn't be happier to see how everybody has kind of done really well, given how we all grew up.
Wow. And what's your middle brother's name?
Mark.
Shout out to Mark. And your youngest brother's name?
Steven.
Steven. Shout out to Steven. And salute to Steven for his service in our country and in New York City. Hope he has an enjoyable time down there in South Carolina. So, okay, going back to you as a child, let's talk about high school. You said you were, really clean-cut kid and really had your processes together when it came to, doing your academics, et cetera. What would you say was your transitioning from high school to college? How did you make that transition? And why did you go to whatever school you ended up going to?
Yeah, so what happened is funny. I would take a step back, and the move to high school, I think, was probably one of the first transitional or transformational aspects of my background. I think my dad had wanted me to go to a top-flight Catholic high school in Long Island called St. Anthony's, and it was all boys back then. My uncle had been an assistant football coach there, spoke glowingly of the school, knew the Franciscan brothers that ran it, a lot of discipline there. And it was funny, I ended up going, and it was the first year that it was co-ed. And, when I went, it went from being a reasonable commute to an absolutely insane commute as a 9th grader. And again, for me, it was a fantastic experience, having been put through it. Again, I looked at, on a teacher's salary for my dad because my mother didn't work. I mean, he took jobs over the summers to help pay for sending me to school, and whether that was painting political signs over the summer or driving a taxi. I mean, I completely appreciated everything he did for me. And one of the great things he also did was made me get a job every summer, and then he made me give him, money. He gave him $1,000 every summer.
Awesome.
And what he ended up doing for me, though, was when I needed spending money during the year, he'd actually give that back to me. So it was actually nice in terms of what he did. But I think, when I went to that high school, I started there. I was incredibly nervous. I was not sure what to expect. And it was high octane, right? I mean, the expectations were so much higher going to that school. And there was a bunch of kids from that school that went to Ivy League colleges, right? Mm-hmm. So it was a very different experience for me. And again, I do this now because my kids I have a sophomore in high school and a freshman in high school. And I wish I would have known better to study a bit harder, to apply myself for the SAT when I needed to. Again, I think I ended up going to the University of Scranton in Scranton, Pennsylvania, which was an old depressed coal mining town, which was a great school. I mean, it was a perfect outlet for me at that time in my life. We had usually 13, 14 kids from my class, from every class at St. Anthony's would find their way to Scranton. So I had an embedded bunch of friends that went there. Some of my best friends now are kids that I went to both high school and college with, which is kind of incredible. So, for me going to Scranton, I think my dad and mom were incredibly happy that I just got into Gotham. Yeah. I was the first one to really go to a 4-year degree, or to get a 4-year degree, so I think they were incredibly happy. And I look at how, I work with our kids now, my kids, and, the expectations for them were so much higher. Again, they're very switched on. I think, the thing I also had to navigate when I was in high school and then college and now is ADHD, right? And I think, trying to navigate that is hard. And I can't imagine if I had the amount of stimulus that these kids today have to deal with. When I was going, I didn't have a phone. I didn't have the internet didn't exist, none of that stuff. And I just look at, all the complexities of men learning and teaching today. With that's incredibly hard. I'd also say that, for me, it was very humbling in that I had to work so much harder just to get B pluses, right? And that's demoralizing sometimes when you just put your heart and soul into studying and it's just not good enough, and that's why, to me, hard work today still counts more than anything, and for whatever we do. But, getting through high school and then getting into college, And again, college for the University of Scranton was, no football team, no fraternities, no sororities, none of that. It was a small Jesuit college. And again, some of those kids that I met there were the greatest kids that I've ever met in my life, and just really down-to-earth good people.
Okay, cool. Going back, so Scranton. Appreciate your insight in hearing about your experiences on University of Scranton. I know that's probably near and dear to your heart. And, to your point, it may not be the Ivy Leagues, but you can do well from anywhere as long as you work hard at it, and you're a testament to that. You can do it! So let's touch on schooling. What did you major in?
It's funny, I majored in accounting, which, to this day, I hate accounting. Again, it was something that, my dad didn't have a lot of people that were in business, didn't have a lot of connections. Had one friend, I think, that worked at Deutsche Bank. I talked to that person, and he said, look, if you don't really know what you want to do, accounting is a good foundational experience to come out of college with. And at the end of the day, he's right. And so I did study accounting, and then I was able to segue into, real estate investing ultimately. But accounting was a good foundation to have. But the reality was I didn't like it. I'm glad. It's funny too, when I look at the University of Scranton, I was the treasurer or whatever of the accounting society. I think I was the only officer that did not get an offer from a Big Six accounting firm. Oh, no. Which again is humbling and demoralizing. But in hindsight, it's the best thing that happened to me, because I didn't want to be an accountant. I didn't want to be an auditor. And it might have been a setback at the time that I didn't fully appreciate was a great thing that I did not get an offer from any of them.
Right. Okay, so then you talk about the relationships you built at the University of Scranton. Is there anybody that comes to mind that you want to shout out real quick, maybe a friend or a professor who really, had a huge, impression on you when you were young as a student at that school?
Yeah, so look, I would tell you the two guys at St. Anthony's that were the guys that probably had the biggest imprint on me, Brother Gary Cregan and Brother Joshua. And I'll never forget, I spent a lot of time with them when I was at St. Anthony's. They had respect from everybody that attended that school. Not always necessarily liked, but very much respected. And what I would tell you, what had a lifelong impact on me was when my father had passed away, and we were at the wake, and I was very close with my dad, so this was an incredibly sad time for me personally. And those two guys showed up, right, and they came to the wake, and I'll never forget, it was like the Red Sea party. I remember the door, they came through the door, and they were wearing their Franciscan brother attire, and came right over to me and gave me big hugs, right? And it was incredibly meaningful to get that at that point in my life, because it was just, beyond sad. And for them to have done that was incredibly impactful.
Wow. And what were their names again?
Brother Gary and Brother Joshua. Shout
out to Brother Gary and Brother Joshua if they're watching this video. Brother Gary, Brother Joshua, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Also, if you're from St. Anthony's in Long Island, definitely, show your love. And University of Scranton, show your love to anybody that's attended that school. We definitely appreciate the support on this platform. And so, okay, going back into your college days, so you graduate, and then you didn't get it, like you said, you didn't get an offer from a big accountant firm, as many know probably who they are. So what happened?
Yeah, look, I graduated in June of '92, which was a horrific job market at the time, probably rivals, maybe not worse than kind of what you see today. I think I had sent out 300 offer letters and resumes, and I literally got one offer.
Don't take it personally, and don't jump to conclusions.
And that offer was with Prudential Securities in the accounting group, downtown Manhattan. And obviously I took it, and I ran with it. And I started the commute from where I lived out in Selden, Long Island. I got on the Ronkonkoma train and took that to Penn Station, and I had to get off the Long Island Railroad and then jump on the subway downtown, which was an incredibly long commute, as a 22-year-old kid. So I was with Prudential Securities. Again, I loved it. I would tell you, I was one of the first in the morning, and I left late, when I was there. And one of the jobs that I had was to reconcile the expense category for Hardwick Simmons, who at the time was the chairman and CEO. So I used to see not only his base salary, all of his bonus payments, and then I used to see all of the Sikorsky helicopter trips from Westchester down to the seaport, and it kind of blew me away. And at the time, Prudential also had a very big real estate group. I think there was a common saying that it was the third largest in the world behind the Catholic Church and the U.S. government. Damn! Wow. In terms of real estate holdings. And they had an analyst program that I applied to. I was asked to interview. So I had to go out to Newark, New Jersey at the time and interview there. And then I was lucky enough to have been selected. And again, if you look at, in hindsight, one of the best foundational things that ever could have happened to me. I mean, I met a lot of really great people, a lot of really good, solid real estate people. And then the training there was incredible. So it could not have been better for me but then I was probably 24 years old after having done 2 years at Prudential Securities. But it was a phenomenal experience to learn so much more about real estate, which I never knew and never had the appreciation of before.
Awesome. And is there anybody from that company at Prudential that you want to shout out that was influential in your career early on?
There was a couple people there. I think my first boss was Gary Picone, who kind of took me under his wing and then was a phenomenal mentor to me. The next person I worked for was John Maurer, who I worked for when we moved out to ultimately Parsippany, New Jersey. And John was a physically intimidating person, but a genuine great guy and incredibly knowledgeable. And then there were just people there that I worked with, and you kind of look at how the world goes full circle. And Joe Bonner was a transaction person that I kept in touch with, and I still do today. Joe Margolis was a friend back in the day, and Joe is now is the chief executive of Extra Space Self Storage. We were able to do a joint venture with them not that long ago, which was a great result of having known each other for a long time. Garrett Kaufman was a senior transactions person who I just thought the world of. I thought he was incredibly talented. So there were a lot of people there that I touched base with that I really, really appreciated working with.
Awesome, man. That sounds like you got a great experience over there. And then when you were at Prudential, like what led you into your next role at Prudential or your next job at a different firm?
Yeah. So I stayed at Prudential for 8 years. They treated me very, very well. Towards the end, I think in the latter 90s, they sponsored me to go for my executive MBA, where I went to NYU. Okay. Which again was another transformational experience for me. And then the reality was I was doing a reverse commute going from, at the time I lived at Hoboken, and I was traveling out to Parsippany. And it was really not so much a meritocracy in terms of how pay worked.
Right.
And I had kind of came to understand how a couple of my colleagues were being paid, and it was similar to me, and I obviously thought I was doing a better job, and there was no differentiation. And as luck would have it, search firm called and asked if I was interested in chatting with an investment bank in their real estate group. I said absolutely, and I went in there, and that ended up being Morgan Stanley. So I interviewed there, and again I met some of the smartest people that I've ever met in my life. Again, but that were just really good people, and I was lucky enough to get a job offer there, and started in New York City and at 1585 Broadway. And again, in early and out late was a kind of repeating theme. The work experience there was just incredibly interesting, very different to what I was doing at Prudential. And again, I was working with people that were high intensity, high octane all the time. And it was just a great match for me at that point in my life and at that point in my career.
Awesome. We got a shout out. You rattled off a couple names as well as a couple companies. We got to shout them out. So shout out to Gary, John, and the Joes that were influential to you, and shout out to Prudential as well as NYU's MBA program. I'm sure you're a proud Sterney. And shout out to Morgan Stanley. So you touched on your experience there and the people you met. That's no surprise to anybody. Those are fine institutions, especially the last one you just named. So it sounds like you had a really, really good experience there. So what led you to getting the job you have now? And have you always been an asset manager? Let's bridge that gap. You're working for an investment bank, and now you're working for private equity. But what happened in between that Morgan Stanley to BGO timeframe?
Yeah, so it's funny. I ended up working for 2 years at Morgan Stanley in New York, and then they asked if I was interested to move to Asia. And at the time, I was engaged to the woman that's now my wife, but we went out to take a tour because the job was going to be based in Hong Kong. And we both decided that it would be great, for me to explore that. And I can't say thank you enough for her support, because had she not been, my story would be very different. And we ended up moving, or I moved to Hong Kong first in August of 2004. And I was covering Asia Pacific extra-N, right? And so we spent a lot of time in mainland China, Hong Kong, Singapore, and then ultimately Australia. And spending that much time there, we started getting very active in mainland China. In early 2006, they asked if we would relocate to Shanghai, where Morgan Stanley at the time did not have any investment ID licenses. So we literally opened up the first Morgan Stanley office in mainland China. And we brought 10 people up to China. And then we ultimately had a team of 80 that we hired over the next, I think it was 18 months. Wow. So we had a fully functioning, Shanghai office, which again was phenomenal, right? To kind of drink through a fire hose and learn how to navigate a foreign land with a legal system that was not black and white was an incredible learning experience for me. It was incredibly humbling, learning patience and relaxing and understanding culture. Like all of those things were incredibly valuable. When I worked for Morgan Stanley out there, I ended up working for Sonny Kelsey, who is now, the co-CEO of BGO. And so I developed a great relationship with Sonny, respected him incredibly as not only as a manager, but as a leader and as an investor. And really, enjoyed all of the time that I spent there. And Sonny was critically important in building out the entire Asia infrastructure and framework for Morgan Stanley's real estate business at the time. And so, we were incredibly active all over the region, got to know all of our competitors really well. And as you kind of worked through the financial crisis, 2008, 2009, a lot of senior people ended up starting to depart Morgan Stanley, Sonny being one of them. It was probably a lot less fun place to work for me personally. And at that point, I decided to resign, to step down, and I started my own business. And we did a couple of things. One, we were looking at investing in India, where I had the former head of Morgan Stanley's India business had also left, and we put some money together and started an advisor business there. And then the other one was just my separate business was focused on capital advisory work across Asia Pacific. And so we did a bunch of that. Fast forward that a couple of years, I struck up another consulting agreement with Sonny and what at the time was called Green Oak. And then, fast forward, I think that was another 5.5 years. Since I had started it, this happened, I think, in January of 2012 when it started, and then I ended up, I think we came back for a family trip in December of 2016, and, my wife is an only child, my in-laws, my kids are their only grandchildren, they were in their early 80s, my mother had lost my dad, was on her own, and we kind of just made the decision that it's the right time to come back, and I'll never forget when we were on a ski trip in December of 16. We landed in Singapore, January of 17. And the first call I made was to Sonny, and I said, I think I'm going to relocate back after the school year is out. If there's an angle to work together, that would be great. And if not, no big deal. So again, I used to see Sonny usually for lunch once over the summer, and then usually once during the holidays. And he said, look, this could be interesting. He's like, why don't you come and meet the team when you come back, which I did. And then fast forward those discussions a little bit more, and then Sonny called me and he's like, I have good and bad news. The good news is we'd like to have you come back and be head of asset management. The bad news is you're the only asset manager.
You better need a bigger boat.
And all cradle to grave investing. And,
Wow.
And I kind of said, look, that seems like an ideal fit, and I jumped in, and it was literally like coming home.
Your Majesty, what are you doing here?
A bunch of personalities that I knew already. I understood the sense of urgency, the intensity, the focus, etc. Which, as an entrepreneur, as a one-man band, on your own in doing capital advisor work, this is very different. And it was great. And so I kind of hit the ground running when I returned in July of 17 and joined these guys. And then that, went through, and we ended up merging with Bento Kennedy, which ultimately then became BGO. And again, a job for me as head of asset management for a U.S. business, which is very sizable and noteworthy now, which has been a great end result, for me personally.
Wow, man. That's a great story. We're gonna clap. We're gonna clap it up. We gotta clap it up. All the way from Long Island to University of Scranton, and now you're the head of asset management at BGO. That's a hell of a story. So obviously, for but for the viewers that are viewing this the first time, my job is to chase individuals down with amazing stories. And it sounds like you have one, and I'm glad you're able to share your inside perspective and experiences here on this platform. So again, thank you so much for joining me and sharing this wonderful story. So let's go into we cover career. You're the head of asset management at BGO, fine institution, very reputable firm that everybody's familiar with. And I've seen that you guys have a lot of very trendy, even the logo is fire. Let's see that logo. Let's see that logo right there. Even the logo is fire. But I see the post on LinkedIn and even on your website. You guys have a lot of great initiatives and programs that you guys all support. Let's talk about BGO if you'd like. If you don't want to, that's fine. But let's talk about BGO now that we're there. So what's it like now that the firm's pretty much fully built out and even growing?
Look, I think we merged in July 1st of 2019. I think at the time we had 47 billion of AUM, and today that AUM has grown to over 80 billion. It's been a wild ride, and again, I think we have two guys at the top as co-CEOs, Sonny Kelsey and John Garfield, that are a great complement to each other. But I would put them on par with any leading global investment management business for real estate. I think they're great people. They're very switched on. They understand global financial markets. They understand real estate. They understand how to manage. I couldn't be happier, working with people like that. It's something where we have a very big business in the U.S. I think roughly half of the 80 billion is in the U.S. So our teams not only in asset management, but we also oversee development and construction. So there are a lot of touch points, all over the country, all over these different geographies, across multiple different product types. And there's a lot of personalities involved. And so, I think for us, managing capital across every different return spectrum, whether it's core plus, value add, and then across all of these different product types has been incredibly interesting to watch unfold. And I think the one thing I really appreciate is the level of intensity that the team brings every day. I think we have a lot of people that are, really, really switched on, really sharp, ask a lot of questions, and they're able to do the work. And I think it's been a wild ride to be a part of, as that merger went through and now as it started to mature. And again, I think when we merged, people would always ask, are you a former Greeno person or are you a Bethel Kennedy person? Today, we actually have so many people that are truly hired as BGO people. So there is no, identity needed at all. And we've tried really hard to make sure that everybody looks at it as a one BGO, platform. And it's just been an incredible place to be a part of.
Awesome, man. Awesome. That's amazing. So let's talk about some of the. Okay, so now we're going to go into the what I call the DE&I components of this interview, and this is one of the reasons why I do this platform. And I'm just trying to lead the conversation when it comes to DE&I. Besides highlighting individuals within the space of all different races, colors, and creeds, I'm also trying to help people give their personal insight as well as share their experiences, whether they're a leader like myself with a robust platform or an ally like yourself that's trying to help others, get to a certain point in their career or build out their, foundational knowledge or network, et cetera. What is your, I would say, perspective, or better yet, what is your experience within the D&I space in commercial real estate?
Sure. Look, it's incredibly important. And I kind of looked back at, if you look at how real estate has changed, it was predominantly all white guys when I first started, right in the early 90s. Now, fast forward, and there's still probably more Caucasian, elderly, or older people that were decision makers. And I think then you had George Floyd get murdered, and I think that was an immediate focus point on change that was desperately needed.
I am worthy. I believe I am worthy.
I am worthy. I believe I am worthy.
And so I think you saw the industry basically fall in line to try to do things to try to differentiate and change.
Right.
And I think, it's been very heartening to watch a couple of groups that are very focused on doing things, and we work really closely with a couple of them. So there's a couple outside groups that we work with, and then we have an interior, formal mentorship program within BGO, which a bunch of us are actively participating in throughout the entire year, and that rotates through. And so, I think I've had a couple mentees every 6 months or every 12 months, and then we keep in touch on an ongoing basis to make sure that you are providing, kind of counsel and an ability to listen, right, and to provide some guidance to people that want it, that are looking for it. I think if you look at some of the exterior groups that are noteworthy, for me personally, the job that Cedric Bobo and Project Destined is doing is fantastic. And again, we met Cedric early on, and he is a ball of energy and just an amazing person that is doing so many great things. And so our firm has been actively involved with Project Destined, hosting them in our office and doing teach-ins and bringing on some kids to work with us, etc. So I can't say enough good things about not only what he was starting to do, but he is literally now all over, the real estate universe, working with all the big firms out there. So it's a huge shout out to him. And then there's another initiative, the Goldie Initiative by Goldie Miller out of Chicago, which is focused on women empowerment. And I think that, to me, again, has been incredibly heartening. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and I look at, the job landscape that she will ultimately enter into, 6 years from now when she gets out of college will be wildly different than what it was when I got out of school. And I think the ability for people to, look at minorities, look at women, look at LGBTQ alternatives as something that we can champion and be allies of. It's a very different discussion today than it was, historically. And I think if you look at that and where the industry continues to be headed, it's a phenomenal new beginning in terms of opportunity for so many that maybe would not have had the opportunity to participate like they might today. And so I think that's been a huge positive net for real estate, for everybody interested and involved, and for everybody trying, right? It's been incredible to watch.
Awesome, man. That's awesome. I appreciate you and your company's involvement in the D&I space and the support they've given all these platforms and different programs. And obviously with the Goldie Initiative, that's an amazing organization to be involved in as well, helping out women in the commercial real estate industry as well out there in Chicago. So I know they're doing great things. So I definitely, I want to give you your flowers for definitely supporting those groups, yourself personally as well as your organization. So here's the thing. I'm going to throw you a curveball. So you're a white male.
Yeah.
Obviously. Wait. Here's where I'm going. Oh, what about white men? Are we in an era or in a time where white men feel a little left out, like, what about me? And I'm not trying to set you up for, I'm not trying to set you up. I'm just saying, this platform highlights D&I, minorities, women, all different race, colors, and creeds. From a white guy's perspective, tell me, does your cohort feel left out, or should something be done for, you see where I'm going with this, right? It's kind of hard to get out, but what's your perspective? What's your insight? What's your group talking about? Do they feel left out?
Yeah. So I would say, personally, my experience is a little bit different because I'm married to an Indian woman, so my kids are biracial.
Okay.
They have been discriminated against in certain situations historically, which I did not like. I would never try to put that on par with my minority colleagues or minorities in general. It's not the same.
Right.
I do feel sometimes that, look, there's a huge emphasis on minorities and females, which again is deserved. What does that mean for Caucasian kids? I think you just have to go out and hire the best people that you can. Obviously, with an emphasis on trying to help others kind of get up the curve and get experience and get exposure. That's great. I don't think that means that you are not going to hire white men. That just can't happen.
Right.
That's unfair. It's unreasonable. It's not rational.
Right.
But the point is taken, right? I think there's probably some angst around that, just given the movement towards where hiring is. But again, I think if it's balanced in terms of the outlook and what you're doing, I think, again, you just try to hire the right people for the right job. Right. That just means that you're going to try to cast a wider net, a larger universe of participants, that you want to talk to. And there might be some people there that are just not equipped or qualified. And again, I can't tell you how many people I stay in touch with that I might have interviewed that look great as candidates, but are just not the right fit, whether that is male, female, or minority. And I try to talk to them about kind of the things that they need to do, and you kind of think about putting tools in your tool belt to make yourself as valuable as possible. And I think it's my pleasure to keep in touch with a lot of these kids that are looking for guidance and are looking for feedback, because I think at the end of the day, if you take a long view, and the long is probably a little bit different for me. I probably have 10 years or so left to do this, but I think you can be very impactful still to a lot of people. Being a mentor, you might not be hiring them, but that doesn't mean that you can't keep talking to them and trying to help them. Yeah. And there's a whole host of kids out there that I continue to chat with. Again, we just posted an analyst position for us at BGO, and the amount of inbound inquiry I got on LinkedIn has been incredible. Right. And there's been a bunch of kids there that are probably just not the right fit. And I think for us, the ability to hire the right people is what we're very focused on. Now, again, as long as we're casting that net very wide and looking to kind of look at a lot of different options and alternatives that are out there, we're going to continue to focus on doing that. And then at the end of the day, try to hire the right people.
I thought to myself, I'm helping, minorities, et cetera, military, okay, women, I got it, check. And I'm saying to myself, okay, there's a lot of stuff coming against D&I, okay, got that. all right, maybe I need to be inclusive, right? So my mission is minorities, we get it, we can see it. But you know what? I need to include my white brethren as well, right? And so that's why I was looking for people, and I saw you're very active on LinkedIn, and I follow you, and I read your daily doses. I appreciate that. So I was like, you know what? This is my guy. This is my guy. I got to have this guy on. Here we go. This is going to be my first Caucasian male on my platform, and I'm going to go from there. So I'm trying to be inclusive as well. And just as I'm trying to be inclusive, I think it happens in reverse. It's not me against them, or it's only us, or, I'm leading my people, I'm providing a platform for I'm looking at it, you know what? I took a step back and I said, okay, there's a little animosity toward us. I'm sensing, I'm seeing in the headlines. How about I just start including others as well? So thanks a lot again for coming on my platform.
I think the one thing for me is I think you have to be prepared to be involved in uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah.
Right? And again, I don't profess to have the right answers when we talk about my colleagues or LGBTQ persons. I have so many friends that run the spectrum of everything, right? And I think at the end of the day, if you can remain grounded and remain rational and reasonable and thoughtful and empathetic, like there'll be a way to figure this stuff out. But it's hard, right? And it's hard as a white person, right, to be involved in a lot of these discussions. Because I have not gotten through or have had to go through what a lot of my colleagues have had to go through. And again, we've had some minority colleagues that came to me and they talk about imposter syndrome, right, and what that means to them. And I kind of fall back and I said, look, I would tell you I have the exact same thing in that I did not grow up with country club memberships and going and staying at the Four Seasons Hotel on vacation. I didn't even go on vacation when I was growing up. We went nowhere. I didn't get on a plane until I was, well into my probably late teens, early 20s, right, when I started going on trips. But I think it's trying to be understanding, trying to be empathetic to what's happening. And again, look, I'm probably going to get a million of these conversations wrong. But there's nothing that's done with ill intent, right? I think we're always trying to do the right thing. And again, we'll get some things wrong, and I think we'll learn from it and try to do the right thing on a go-forward basis. But it is not easy at all in the slightest. And I think people understand and appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem, man. I appreciate the conversation, man. I'm really enjoying this discussion. So, okay, so I think we talked about the D&I. Sorry for going off track, but I had to get that insight from you. So I hope everybody respects me for that. So going back to your career, so where do you see yourself? You are. What is a day in a life like for head of asset management at a well-regarded PE shop? What is your day to day? How does someone like you that's at the top of in your profession, how do you go higher? Like what does that look like for you? Your day to day, and then your aspirations within your current role.
Yeah, look, I think the day to day for what we do now, again, it's still an incredible learning experience for me. The real estate markets are very challenged.
Yeah.
There's a lot of noise and disruption in the capital markets. There is a tremendous amount of pressure on any owners of office buildings all over the country. So trying to be creative, trying to be commercial, trying to be aggressive in terms of understanding, what we can do to best position those buildings to get them leased is a huge focus for us. I think we've looked at staffing and how we round out the team and what are the needs today versus what they might have been, in the past. It's very different. We have an internal head of marketing for the first time in my career. We have a national head of leasing that we never had before. Because the markets have changed, right? I mean, they're just very different, and the areas of focus and intensity are very different. And so I think it's been a very evolutionary process, going through COVID and then navigating your way out of it. And the reality is a lot of these tenant decision makers are still trying to figure that stuff out, right? I think they are trying to understand what's good for them, what's good for their employees. What does that translate into in terms of designed new office space? What kind of amenities do they want and need in office buildings to make that alternative look appealing to their tenancy. Again, we just launched or announced a massive, I think it was a 17-year lease, 550,000 feet with Bank of America in Jersey City. That is, I think, the biggest lease in Jersey City in the last decade.
Okay, do you realize how huge this is?
Congratulations. Clap it up, clap it up.
An active lease in and of itself for the office markets. And again, I think what differentiated us, hopefully, was an ability to get right to the what was needed to get to in terms of not only economics, but the entire holistic solution that we want to be able to deliver for the tenant and its employees. And I think kind of navigating COVID through an empathetic lens to understand the pain points that all of these tenants had to navigate. And then now, navigating through very choppy waters with accelerated and high interest rates, right? I mean, that puts a lot of strain on companies and their operating income, on margins, et cetera. So there was a lot of things that we're focused on. And we hired a head of really all of our debt work to navigate through all of these loan modifications that we're doing with all of the lenders that we have. And so those discussions are active and often. So I kind of laugh today because my job is not so much focused on the blocking and tackling. I don't have to get into the details of everything we do on leasing and management across a very large portfolio. I tend to focus today probably more on the issues and the problems, which can be incredibly stressful, right? And I think, for me, to be able to leverage and lean on people that we have in their roles that are very, very good in their jobs, so I don't have to second guess. I don't have to go do their job. They do it, and then I can just come in on an as-needed basis. I always laugh. I was at an annual meeting, and our co-CEO took me over to meet one of our biggest development partners, and I said, I'm really sorry that we haven't met yet, but the reality is I tend to focus on where the problems are.
Houston, we have a problem.
It's probably a good thing that we haven't met because there's no issues with the joint venture. We kind of both laughed about it, but I think that's kind of the reality of just where the markets are today and kind of where, senior management time is spent and needed. Then you layer in kind of managing through a team that might be on the younger side that hasn't had to go through very difficult markets like this, right? And the thing I love is a lot of them, the people that work with us, take their jobs really seriously, and that they get down when things don't work out, right? And so to me, at the end of the day, if you've done everything you can and you've tried, you've put forward your best effort and it just didn't work, so be it, right? Nobody can ever be upset about that. Right. So I think we try to get the basics right, just in terms of blocking and tackling. And I have a lot of confidence that we do, right? And there's just a lot of focus, there's a lot of intensity. And again, we move in a lot of different people, right? I mean, we talk to the portfolio management team, we talk to our transactions colleagues. Like I said, we're heavily involved in the asset management, development, and construction of what we do. So there's a lot of different touch points about how we run the business today, which I think on the margin works pretty well for us.
Right. And going back, appreciate that response. And going back to my second question, and again, we're on an interview. I'm kind of just conversating you like we're just chatting over a beer. What motivates me in my career is the next, one of the things in my career going vertical is the next step, the next promotion. This is one of the things that motivates me. The next step, the next promotion, the next title, the next deal, right? And that's just how I'm wired. I'm a deal guy. What happens when you are already the head of something? The head of asset management, the head of, you're the general counsel, you're the head of consulting, the head of acquisition, the head of development. How do you stay motivated?
Yeah, look, I mean, I still love what I do. I think I'm very, very lucky that I was able to find a job that is varied and different daily, right? I mean, it's never the same and it's never boring. I get to work on things all over the country. I get to travel around the country. I get to meet and deal with people all the time. And then we have a ton of issues that we have to work through. And I think if you have intensity, if you have focus, if you have creativity, and if you have a lot of great people that work with you, you can do great things. And so I'm still challenged every day when I come in. Okay. And what's been more interesting is not only the blocking and tackling from a a real estate investment perspective, but as you get more senior, you take on a bit more in terms of managerial oversight.
Okay.
So understanding, what motivates individuals on the team and what's meaningful to them. How are they feeling? Asking more empathetic questions about person's well-being today versus what you might have done 15, 20 years ago that would not have been in the conversation.
Right.
There's a huge focus on mental health. I mean, we are very focused on making sure that we have created a sense of flexibility in work schedules. I mean, we're back 4 days a week in the office and then flex on Friday. We give flex time. We have given some flex time around the holidays, whether it was the year-end holidays in December or sometimes around over the summer when things just slow down. So I think we've tried to listen to what, works for the team broadly. And again, people you grow up and you have families and you have issues and you have things that you have to attend to. So there's no, hard and fast rule about that. I think we're very flexible with understanding, what happens. And it's more interesting, I think, as, things have evolved. We've hired a bunch of people, and I think I was talking to a counterparty once who saw what our maternity leave policy was, and she said, I read your policy and everyone started crying because it's very generous, right? And then we do the same thing on paternity policy, right? And again, it's just those are the types of things that historically might not have been a big focus for, but are incredibly meaningful. And they think, look, we work for I love the firm. I love what we're doing. We have incredible, financial and parental backing with Sun Life, the insurance company out of Canada, that has been incredibly supportive of the business from day one when the whole merger got consummated. So we work with a bunch of really great people, which again makes it a great place for you to want to go to work.
Right.
If I didn't have that, then we'd be having a very
right. Yeah. There's all this.
I'm just a lot older now, and I get out of bed in the morning early, and I'm in the office early, and I try to leave a little bit earlier now because I got to take a long commute back home. But there's never a day where I've woken up and said, "Well, I don't want to go. Right? This is not for me." And that literally happened to me twice before. And when I got to that point, I just quit. Right? I didn't want to do it, or I found another job. Here, things are going great.
That's awesome.
The trajectory of the firm is great. The people are great. Everyone's got issues to work through, and we're doing that just like everybody else. But it's been a great ride.
Oh man, that's awesome. That's awesome. Let's snap it up. Let's snap it up. Let's snap it up. And look, we've lathered it all with the BGO mustard. We've lathered it all in this interview. But I do appreciate it, man. And I like to not only highlight the stories, but also highlight the experiences and the companies giving these individuals these great experiences. And it sounds like you've had an amazing one at BGO. So if BGO wants to contact me, we can work something out. I'm always looking for sponsorships. All right, now let's go back into your family. Your wife.
Yep.
Tell me a little about your wife. How did you guys meet?
It's funny. We both don't know that we met. That's deep.
That sounds a little scary.
Yeah, no. We get that question all the time, and we both always laugh about it. So really what happened, when I worked at Prudential, one of her college classmates worked with me. And then we literally just met sporadically over the years, whether it was at a party or a happy hour or whatever. We both were dating different people at the time, so there was no main time when we met. It was just a happenstance over time. And then there came a time when we both were basically single and reconnected at a charity event much later. So that would probably be the time when I'd say we kind of met and then started an active dialogue, often getting to know each other and spend a bunch of time together. And actually, I think we put down a deposit on the wedding reception venue before we were actually engaged. I think we both kind of knew it happened and fell into place, pretty quickly.
Cool. And what's her name?
Shilu.
Shulu, shout out to Shulu and the rest of the fam. And speaking about the rest of the fam, what are you said you have kids. What are your kids' names and who are they?
Yeah, so we have a 16-year-old Izzy, short for Isabella,
Okay.
and 14-year-old Hudson. Izzy is a sophomore in high school, and Hudson is a freshman.
Awesome. So I could tell you're a proud father.
Yes. Keeping me toes.
Yeah, I bet. That was the heartfelt section of the interview. Now let's go into the more leisurely rapid fire. So I'm gonna throw you some quick questions. You could give me quick answers back, and they're very casual. A lot of them are just softball for you. So first, what I like to throw out there: what's your favorite color?
Blue.
We get that all the time. What's your favorite meal to eat?
Favorite meal is there's a small Italian eatery in town in Princeton, Teresa's, where I always get the balsamico, so chicken balsamico.
Okay. I gotta go to Teresa's in Princeton. What's your favorite car? If you could,
Say again?
favorite car. If you could drive anything in the world, what would it be?
I've always liked Maserati.
Okay, you're a Maserati man. Okay. All right. So, what is your favorite book to read? Have you read? Do you have like a favorite book?
Yeah, I just finished Boys in the Boat right before the movie came out, which, the whole family read the book, and then we actually went to go see the movie on Christmas Day, which was great.
Okay. There's a movie called Boys in the Boat, and I don't know about this. I never heard of this before. It just came out?
Well, it came out Christmas time.
Okay.
It's an amazing story about a bunch of kids that were on the University of Washington rowing team.
Oh, yeah.
36. Well, I guess in the early 30s, and then they ended up going to the Olympics. And then they did really well, but it shows kind of this whole trajectory on how they showed up, and after the Depression, and a bunch of kids, had no means, and then they got room and board if they made the team.
Wow.
It's a phenomenal, heartwarming story.
Okay, you know what? I do. This was like created by George Clooney.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, I did see that. All right, now I did see that commercial. Now I need to go see the movie. What would you say is your favorite place to vacation?
That's funny. That's a good question. I would tell you the one thing that I adore. My wife gets us going. We've traveled all over the world, right? So I think having lived in Asia, we've gone to whether it was Bali or Phuket or Thailand or anywhere over Thailand. Those vacations have been phenomenal. I love just travel in general, right? I don't know if I have a favorite place. I'm trying not to go back to the same place, although I would tell you, we do try to go skiing once a winter, and we usually go to Snowmass out by Aspen, which I'd say that's arguably one of the places that we love to go.
Okay, that's a go-to. All right, so this is more leisurely cool down. What are you watching on Netflix or any of the other streaming services? What is something you either finished up watching or you loved watching?
Rented and watched The Holdovers, which was a movie with Paul Giamatti. We just literally watched it last night.
Okay, awesome. Do you recommend it?
Oh, absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is one of my favorite components within the interview. I call this the quote battle. Here, me and my interviewee go back and forth on who has the better quote that has inspired them to either be where they're at or get to where they need to be. So, if you don't mind, please, in the comment box below, go ahead and comment who won which round, or better yet, who won the overall quote battle. And don't forget, like, subscribe, and share. All right.
Round one, fight!
Round one. I'll go ahead and start. Okay. All right. Success is going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. Winston Churchill. Everybody loves Winston.
One of the quotes that I loved, and unfortunately it's from an unknown person, but I loved what it said. Don't be upset by the results you didn't get with the work that you didn't do.
Mr. Anonymous. No problem, no problem. Okay.
Round 2, fight.
Round two, y'all. Round two. Here we go. All right, you ready, Rob?
Yep.
Okay, round 2. The only way to do great work is to love what you do. And your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Steve Jobs. Rest in peace. Snap it up, Steve Jobs. Y'all rest in peace. One of the best founders ever. All right, your turn.
All right, that was a good one. Another one I liked, failure to prepare is preparation to failure. John Wooden.
Wow.
Okay, John Wooden. Snap it up for the late, great John Wooden. Good job. One of the greatest. Okay.
Round 3, fight.
Round 3. Here's the final round. Okay. We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. And if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. Martin Luther King Jr. The late, great MLK, the greatest activist of all time. Snap it up for the MLK, snap it up for the MLK. Your turn, Rob.
All right, last but not least, the true soldier fights not because he hates what is in front of him, but because he loves what's behind him. By G.K. Chesterton.
Okay, GK, snap it up at GK. All right, thank you so much, Rob. And look, for our viewers out there, please don't forget to put who won the quote battle. We love to go back and forth and just have a jovial conversation and share quotes that have inspired us to be where we're at or continue going where we need to be. All right, so I'm gonna take my glasses off, and I have one more question for you, Rob.
Sure.
All right, this is the last question. If you can go in a time machine, or the DeLorean,
Great Scott.
whatever you want to pick, if you can go back in time and you saw yourself, what words of wisdom would you give a 18 to 22-year-old Rob Naso?
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that. I thought about this actually kind of recently when I was just thinking about my kids and the work that they're doing and the prep work that they're doing for college. I think, again, I referenced before that, my parents ultimately were just happy that I went to college. I think I did not appreciate the prep that was really needed. I wish I would have focused a bit more on doing work to make sure that I did as well as I possibly could on the SATs and the boards like that. But again, in hindsight, that would have been a nice to have. I'm totally happy and fine with how things evolved and worked out. I do laugh as a segue. One of the things that ended up happening when I applied to business schools, where I went down to Wharton, and the first thing the lady told me in admissions was that I had to take the GMAT again. And we actually got into an argument about how I didn't think that test was an active or an accurate predictor of how I was going to do. And we agreed to disagree. I walked out of there furious, angry. I did not apply there. I probably wouldn't have gotten in had I applied, which I was pretty open about. I ended up going to NYU, and everything worked out like a dream. So again, when you think roadblocks are put up, sometimes they actually end up working out for the best. So I'm entirely pleased and happy with how things worked out in that respect.
Okay, that's what you would tell a young Rob Naso, that everything worked out? Yeah, everything's gonna work out.
Work and it'll take care of itself. You'll be fine.
Awesome. And you know what? I lied. I said that was going to be the last question. I got one more question for you. Tell us about your LinkedIn activity, the Daily Dose. Tell us about that. What got you started doing that, man? I'm always interested.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I don't know actually how it started.
Wait, time out. So you don't know how you met your wife, and then you don't know how you did it. Dude, you just, go ahead.
I think, for me, I think as I've gotten a little bit older and probably a little bit more confident in what I do and how I do it, I tend to feel like there's certain things I'd like to talk about. I'm an intuitively positive person. I think there's a lot of negativity in the world, and my wife kind of kids around with me sometimes in that I really never had a bad day, and I can literally count on a couple fingers. One, when my mother had a massive stroke, and two, when my dad passed away, and I think those were two of the worst days of my lives. And then, both of my kids, when they were born, ended up being in the NICU, and those were tough times, but we ended up working through it. I tend to be pretty positive. Like I don't harp on the negative. I laugh sometimes and think that I have a mind like a goldfish, and that I don't get hung up on things that happen with the negativity. I tend to look for the positive, or there's a way around the negative, right? And so that led to posting some of rolled into the Daily Dose, which is just a quick quote usually, and then there are some of those quotes or something has happened that resonates with me where I might expound upon it and write something a bit more.
All right, Rob. Well, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your time and enjoying this platform. And you really just helped me get through some of my thoughts that I had in my head. This is a great, more of a casual conversation than an interview. So thank you for sharing your story, your progress, your passion, your performance, everything you've had, and a little bit about your people at BGO. I really do appreciate you sharing all those insights, perspective, and experiences with me on my platform. So thank you.